Nobody saw this coming. One moment, Shohei Ohtani was standing on that mound delivering yet another masterclass performance, shutting down lineups with ruthless efficiency, ERA glittering below 1.00, the Cy Young conversation building with every pitch. And then, before the post-game handshakes were even finished, the Dodgers clubhouse was turned completely upside down. Manager Dave Roberts stepped in front of the cameras and made an announcement that sent shockwaves across all of Major League Baseball. Dalton rushing sent down. Edwin Diaz's future in question. Kyle Tucker's status suddenly uncertain. And right in the middle of all of this chaos, Shohei Ohtani himself stepped to the microphone and said something nobody expected. Let's break down exactly what happened, what it means, and why this moment could define the entire 2026 season for Los Angeles. What happened in that sixth inning was a perfect example of who Ohtani is in 2026. He didn't just pitch. He dominated with intelligence. He came into that inning with runners threatening, the lineup turning over for the third time, and every analyst in the country wondering whether this would be the inning where cracks finally appeared. Instead, Ohtani reached back and reminded everyone why the Cy Young conversation isn't even close right now. 3 runs surrendered? Yes. But look deeper. He induced weak contact repeatedly, made sharp adjustments mid-inning, and when the moment demanded he compete at full intensity, his fastball sat at 99 miles per hour like the first inning had never happened. That is not normal. That is something different. Honestly, the most frustrating thing about facing Ohtani in that kind of inning is that even when he gives up runs, the hitter never truly feels like they beat him. The 3 runs that scored came off imperfect pitch location, not off hitters squaring him up with confidence. His sweeper was still breaking sharply out of the zone. His four-seam fastball was still generating late movement that made timing almost impossible. Batters were reactive, not aggressive. And that is the defining difference between Ohtani and every other pitcher in this league. Even in a rough inning, the mental advantage stays entirely in his favor. The hitters walked off that field not feeling like they figured something out. They felt like they survived. What Roberts did was something you rarely see from a manager in the middle of a winning season. He didn't sugarcoat. He didn't use vague baseball language about evaluating options. He was direct. The organization had reached a point where hard decisions could no longer be delayed. Both Kyle Tucker and Dalton Rushing had already been removed from a recent game due to injury, Tucker with back spasms and Rushing after taking a foul tip to the head. That alone was alarming. But what came next made the baseball world stop completely. The GM had reportedly delivered a message to Rushing that was as clear as it gets: perform at the major league level or accept a demotion to AAA Oklahoma City. For a catcher who was supposed to be the future of this franchise, those words landed like a sledgehammer. Because of everything Dalton Rushing represents for the Dodgers' long-term plan. He was not just a backup. He was groomed to be a cornerstone. He was on the opening day roster alongside Ohtani, Freeman, Betts, and every other star on this team. That alone tells you the level of trust the organization placed in him entering 2026. To now hear management say publicly that the minor leagues are on the table is a stunning reversal. And what makes it even more complicated is the timing. Ohtani and Rushing have had visible communication issues on the mound this season. There were reports of Ohtani and Rushing not being on the same page during at least one game, forcing Roberts to intervene directly. When your franchise pitcher and your starting catcher are out of sync, something has to change. The GM decided that something was going to change now, not in August. Edwin Diaz was supposed to solve the problem the Dodgers identified after the 2025 postseason. They signed him to a 3-year, $69 million deal that set a record for average annual value for a relief pitcher. That is how serious they were about locking down the back end of their bullpen. And for stretches of this season, Diaz looked like exactly that investment paying off. But the reports now circulating around the league paint a different picture. The Dodgers have been saying Diaz is fine, but the language around his status has been careful enough to raise eyebrows, and when a team that just paid a reliever that kind of money starts choosing words very carefully, the baseball world notices. The possibility of Diaz being moved or having his role significantly reduced is not just rumor at this point. It is a conversation the front office is actively having. It means everything changes in October. During the regular season, the Dodgers have enough depth to absorb almost any loss. But in the postseason, when Roberts needs a bridge from his starter to the finish line, Diaz at his best is one of the few relievers in baseball capable of making hitters look genuinely helpless. His fastball-slider combination at full velocity is as good as anything in the National League bullpen. The problem is that a reliever pitching through injury or inconsistency in October is not an asset. He becomes a liability. And for a team chasing a third consecutive World Series title, that is a risk the front office clearly does not want to carry. The trade conversations are not about giving up on Diaz. They are about protecting the team's October ceiling. Kyle Tucker arrived in Los Angeles as the most expensive position player signing of the offseason. His 4-year, $240 million contract set a record for present-day average annual value for any position player in baseball history. The expectation was that he would slide into the cleanup spot behind Ohtani and Freeman and immediately transform this lineup from great into historically dangerous. Instead, Tucker has been openly self-deprecating about what has been a miserable season in Los Angeles. When a player that talented starts using that kind of language publicly about his own performance, it signals something deeper than a simple cold stretch. Roberts has already begun addressing what Tucker needs to fix mechanically. But the whispers around the league suggest that if the right deal materialized before the deadline, the front office would at least listen. This is the part that often goes undiscussed. Ohtani's pitching ERA is extraordinary precisely because the Dodgers score runs and give him margins to work with. As a hitter, Ohtani has thrived partly because the lineup around him has forced pitchers to attack the zone. When Tucker is not producing, pitching staffs gain a subtle but real psychological advantage. They can pitch around Ohtani more carefully knowing the threat behind him has diminished. The original vision was that Tucker, Ohtani, Freeman, and Betts would present pitchers with no safe option anywhere in the top of the order. When that vision is partially broken, the entire offensive machine becomes slightly less efficient. Ohtani is still Ohtani. But the support structure matters. This is where the story takes a turn nobody anticipated. After a performance like his 6th inning, after the announcements about rushing and Diaz and Tucker, the expectation was that Ohtani would do what he always does, smile politely, say the right things, deflect with quiet professionalism. Instead, he was direct in a way that felt almost uncharacteristic. Ohtani downplayed his finger concerns but then made comments about his role that immediately generated conversation, suggesting that he was paying close attention to the roster situation around him and that he had opinions about it. For a player who guards his words as carefully as Ohtani does, any statement that breaks from the standard script becomes significant. This was not the standard script. It reveals that he is aware of everything happening around him and that he considers the roster construction directly connected to his own goals this season. Ohtani is not chasing individual awards in a vacuum. He is chasing a Cy Young, another MVP, and most importantly a third World Series ring. When the pieces around him start shifting, he notices. And when he speaks, even carefully, even diplomatically, the organization listens in a way they would never ignore. His statement was not a demand. It was something more powerful than a demand. It was a signal. And signals from Shohei Ohtani carry more weight in that organization than almost anything else. It tells you that this front office refuses to be comfortable. 9 games ahead in the NL West, the best player on the planet performing at historic levels. And they are still making hard decisions and uncomfortable calls because they know October is the only measurement that truly matters. The transaction log for this Dodgers season has already been busy: injuries, options, call-ups, designations, and none of that has slowed them down. Adding 2 players simultaneously while managing the rushing situation and the Diaz questions and the Tucker conversation is not panic. It is precision. This is a franchise that operates on a different level of organizational clarity. The Ohtani era in Los Angeles was never going to be quiet. It was never going to be smooth in a predictable way. What we are watching right now, the 6th inning performances, the emergency announcements, The shocking statements. This is what chasing history actually looks like from the inside. And right at the center of all of it, calm and focused and terrifyingly good, stands Shohei Ohtani. Whatever comes next, you do not want to look away.